Now, I know nobody cares about the sun because the sun doesn't affect us at all. Global warming, all of these things, solar flares, that's crazy people talk. Okay? Let me give you a story that broke last week, and I'll bet you didn't hear about it. SpaceX is feeling the pinch of that solar threat this week. Now, when I first read this, I went, what solar threat this week, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear about it.
The company expects to lose nearly a full launch worth of Starlink internet satellites. Okay, so they launched like 49 of these. Last week, 40 fell to the earth in a fiery flame. 40. That seems kind of catastrophic, doesn't it? It's kind of like, we got 8 left. Kind of a big deal. I didn't hear about it. You know, there are so many things going on. Well, here's what happened. There was a solar storm. Now, Pat, how many times have we heard in our lifetimes? I'm 58 today, right?
Yes.
58 today.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you. I'm 58 today.
Yep.
Satellites have been going up my whole entire life. Yours too.
Uh-huh.
How many times have you heard about those solar flares causing 1 satellite falling to a fiery death?
I don't think I've ever heard it.
I don't think I've ever heard it either. Maybe 1, maybe. I can't recall it, but I'd like to give my, memory, or like this with 40, I just didn't hear about it. And so 40 of them falling seems kind of like a big deal. But these storms are not uncommon. Space weather experts explained to CNBC. And they're only expecting to worsen over the next few years because the sun started a new 11-year solar cycle in December of 2019 and is now ramping to a solar maximum that is expected to hit in 2025. Wow. Okay. Now, the reason why solar storms have not been a big deal is for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been at what we call a solar minimum. Okay, so for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been at a solar minimum. Can you explain the other 55 years of my life? What's happening about that? Notably, the recent solar minimum coincides with a massive spike in the number of satellites in low Earth orbit. About 4,000 small satellites have been launched in the past 4 years. A lot of these are commercial ventures, and they don't understand how significant space weather can affect satellites. I know. I hear this all the time from people who launch satellites. Space weather? Why didn't somebody tell me about space weather? Right? I mean, the people who are launching satellites, it's not like they do that all the time. It's not like there's a lot of math involved. It's not like you're taking something out of the Earth's atmosphere and putting it in the way of direct space weather. I can see how Elon Musk missed this. I mean, he's not a very bright dude when it comes to science, and he's so busy going to Mars that he probably hasn't even thought of space weather. You know what I mean? Right? Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the story you'll get from the press. However, I and my team are geeks. Total and complete geeks. About 6 years ago, maybe, on this program, and I have followed this because I've been fascinated by this theory my whole life. It's called polar shift. And we talked about it about 6 years ago. The poles are moving, and it happens every 12,000 years. Well, the good news is we're not at 12,000. We're not close to 12,000. We're at 12,500. Okay, so we're overdue for a polar shift. Now, there's 2 parts to this, and I'm only going to get into one. The magnetic poles now are probably more like 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, okay, the magnetic poles. We don't really know for sure what happens and when the tipping point is, but they basically just go, whoosh, and when they hit this tipping point, then the South Pole was the North Pole, and the North Pole is now the South Pole. Or maybe the West Pole is now the South Pole, and the East Pole is now the North Pole. We don't know for sure what's going to happen. We just know kind of a big deal, okay?
Yeah, because it's the magnetic force that protects the Earth from the sun.
Exactly right. So how could a small solar storm, when these satellites are all built, well, except for the ones Elon Musk made, because he just doesn't understand space. They're all built to withstand storms that are 1,000 times stronger, okay? And we're going to have those storms soon. We have in the past. It's normal. We will have storms that are 500, 800, 1,000 times more powerful than this. The reason why is because our magnetic field, because our poles are changing, is so weakened now that those storms are coming all the way through and coming and hitting the low Earth orbit, where our magnetic field had those things bouncing off before. So I've had this theory for a while. Now, this is where it becomes Glen, weirdo Glen stuff. Okay, we are no longer talking science. And I know that's what you come for on this show. Deep, deep science. But I have said for how long, Pat, that when what we have expected comes, this global new world order, how are you going to solve this? And I have said for at least a decade, I think it's going to be solved the way that God solved the Tower of Babel. What happened at the Tower of Babel? Tower of Babel, the elites got together and said, let's build a tower to the sky. They said, let's make bricks and build a tower that will reach the sky. And the bricks, God makes stones, meaning individuals. Everybody is different. Dictators, authoritarianism, the other people make everyone exactly the same. You will comply. You will believe this. You will say this and only this. You become a brick. So when Nimrod said, we're going to build a tower to the sky, what he meant was, or when he said we're going to make bricks, we're going to make everybody exactly the same, and they will toe the line, basically slaves. And then we're going to take those people, and they're going to build this tower to the sky, and we will be all powerful, okay? So if you know about oral history, if you have a good rabbi, oral history will tell you, Jewish oral history will tell you that there are many faces of God. The angry, vengeful God, the compassionate God, and I don't know, the one that wants candy. I don't know. But the one that came down for the Tower of Babel is the compassionate God. He wasn't mad at the people. He was compassionate. He saw what was happening to them. And so what did he do to destroy the Tower of Babel? What did he do? He confused their language so they couldn't understand one another anymore. And I thought to myself about 10 years ago, as I'm thinking, how are we going to get past what is coming? I thought, our language is not English. Man's language now is ones and zeros. Massive solar storms work as EMPs. You lose let's just talk about the satellites. You just lose our satellites, our low Earth satellites. I think GPS satellites are low Earth. They now have to, because our polls are changing so fast, they usually, I think, were changed every 10 years or 5 years, and now they have to be changed every year because the polls are changing, so the GPS is off. And so they have to constantly change them now. When we start losing things like GPS, when we start losing things just in space, let alone an EMP, our language of ones and zeros doesn't work anymore. Do we understand each other anymore? Can our society, remember, God said, if they can do this, they'll be able to do anything. We're now talking about artificial life, man creating life, artificial intelligence. The guys I know in Silicon Valley believe artificial intelligence is life because they don't believe in the soul. They don't believe in God. They believe that they are going to create life. If they can do that, they can do anything. And almost anything and everything is being done now, all with ones and zeros. When we get quantum computing up to speed, which is soon, almost anything can be done. I don't bring up the polar shift. I'm really interested in the polar shift. I've been fascinated by it since I was a kid. And I don't bring it up as a catastrophe. Oh, my gosh, we're all going to die. No, I mean, maybe. No, let me rephrase that. Yes, all of us do die in the end. I think we die at different times. I hope so. And not from, solar flares or a polar shift. But I found it interesting that the first thing these solar rays are going to do are start affecting our satellites, because I've never seen that before, at least like this. Our magnetic field is getting weak. This might be a really good thing. I mean, not for us, but I mean, really good thing for humans and freedom.
Right, because when you look at the oppression and the shutting down of people and how far advanced the governments are now as compared to 70 years ago when we had real oppressive regimes.
This is Hitler's dream.
Yeah,
look what they can do to China with 1 billion plus people. They know where everybody is at all times. The World Economic Forum says about the Great Reset, we will know what you do, what you want to do, where you spend your money, where you spend your time, what you think, and even what you dream about. You are taking humans, God's, creation that he wanted to be free and individual, and you're taking them and you are controlling them in the most evil way. I just don't think he stands for that.
Yeah. And we've brought all the devices willingly into our home that allows them to do all these things.
And the only thing that frees people from that electronic cage is a global EMP.
Yeah.
All right. Just some interesting thing that if you have a geek friend, you might want to share.